Did he ever try the rice diet himself, even for a brief period, just to experience what it was
I
like?
don't know that. I have. I went on rice and food for 28 straight days to see what it was like.
And how was that for you?
Just fine, actually. I lost about 30 pounds. My blood pressure improved dramatically, and I've been healthier ever since.
Do you ever go back to it, or do you, I'm assuming, I mean, look, you're 86, you look amazing. You don't seem to have any kind of cognitive decline. And so do you follow a fairly healthy diet and exercise program even till today?
Well, I do, but I don't eat just rice and fruit anymore. I mean, it's not hard, but your social events get really difficult. As I say, my friend, patient X, takes his rice cooker on his yearly retreat with his college buddies. But most people aren't willing to go quite that far.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of issues here. One is if you don't make the diet strict enough that people get results, they're not going to follow it. And if you make it strict enough to give them results, sometimes they don't want to follow it. I would guess, Dr. Kempner's, your experience has been kind of like mine, and that is, once you lay out the plan for people and they accept it and they get on it and they see the phenomenal benefits and they find out, that it's really not so hard and not so restrictive, that they do much better if they stick with it 100%. Somehow or another, that moderation seems to be a slippery slope for people.
Well, it's because people kid themselves about their portion sizes.
Well, they also think they can get away with it. It's just like a drug addict. I can have one cigarette. Not true. Or one drink of alcohol. Not true. I think it's the same way with the food thing. But and I want to look at another thing from a perspective is what the usual plant food, whole food doctor recommends is not strict compared to myself and what I recommend, which is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. Mm-hmm. But compared to the Kempner diet, I seem like a luxurious dinner table.
Well, that's true. And as I say, doing comparisons about whether one works and one doesn't work, I think the really sticking point is how to get people to say, I am going to change my life and do it. And, Kempner got some patients to do it. We occasionally did. I thought that was our greatest shortcoming, was how to help people really get over that, their permanent thing. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. If you want to be free of disease and ill health and all these other complaints, eternal vigilance. And most people think eternity is a long time.
Well, they spent 40, 50, 60 years getting themselves into trouble. They ought to have a few days for penance.
Well, and they're in trouble because, the food that people get offered is not because it's untasty or unhealthy or unpalatable. I mean, people go out of their way to make it seductively tasty.
That's one of the best quotes I've ever heard. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Can I credit you with that? Because I'm going to use that.
No. I wish I could have said it. It is actually quoted to a man named Wendell Phillips, who was an abolitionist preacher in Boston. Although he may have stolen it from another Irishman named Cogan, who apparently wrote something almost, if not identically similar, in the late 1700s. You can look it up online. Most people ascribe it to Thomas Jefferson, and I thought it was too. Then when I wanted to look it up, I got led to Wendell Phillips.
That is so true. There's a bunch of questions for both of you, but Dr. Neelon, you're talking about people overestimating or underestimating their portion sizes. Do you think that everyone has to weigh and measure their food? Because I follow Dr. McDougall's eating style and I eat what he calls ad libitum, but I'm eating the right foods. And I used to be obese myself, almost 200 pounds, but I find if I'm eating the right food, like Dr. McDougall recommends, no oil, whole food, plant-based, low in fat, that I never have to. And I eat very, very large portions. So I'm wondering if this is just for people that were obese and diabetic, or you think everybody needs to do this?
No, I don't mean to say that everybody needs to do it. I'm as pragmatic as Dr. Kempner. If what you're doing is working, the famous quotation from a man named Robert Lurig, who was the professor of medicine at Columbia in the early 1920s. He said to his new interns, if what you're doing is working, don't stop. If what you're doing is not working, stop. And the third quote apparently was, for God's sakes, keep the patients out of the hands of the surgeons.
Yeah.
Now, that's good advice too, but if what you're doing is working, who's to argue with it? Okay, but the proof of that will be the scales, your blood tests, your symptoms, your blood pressure. Okay, I mean, if they're all fine, it's like my patient that we just talked about, patient X has a BMI of 29. If you say to me, is that good? Should he be there? I would say, and I have said to him, I think you should be lower. But he's gone 11 years at that level and everything looks good.
Well, you know, sometimes it's that last 20 pounds.
It is. And,
Yeah.
you know, it would take, you know, reprogramming and re-digital diligence to get back. I think he could. He would have more reserve. He'd have more money in the bank in case something does go amiss. But, you know.
Dr. Neelon, I once heard you say, because there wasn't a lot about you that I could watch or listen to, and people are saying they would love for you to throw your hat back in the ring and start practicing again, even if it's just virtual consults. People really like you. But yeah. I heard you say, all animals left to their own devices will overeat. And do you think that's true, even animals in nature? And I'm not talking about zoos, but like I live somewhere where I see jackrabbits and coyotes and foxes, and I don't see any overweight animals in nature.
Right. Well, of course, we don't know what they're overweight, really, do we? I mean, until we measure what everything's going on. We look at them, they look normal to us. Several years ago, I happened to see a short video clip of young students, grade school students, that were waiting to get the first of the Salk vaccine for polio. And they were cavorting in the playground and jumping around. I said, my God, they're all skinny. And you know what? They were all skinny. And they were all normal weight. And so now if you see kids in the playground, they're going to be much heavier. And we think that's normal. So I don't know what's normal for an animal in the wilderness. It's like sodium. My friend Phil Clemmer says to me, man was designed to desire salt and seek salt and never to find salt. And it's the same way with calories. We were designed, because in the wild, it probably has to be that way, to seek food, make sure you've got enough, to make sure you've got enough gas in the tank for the trip across the Mojave Desert. You know, you don't know what's coming up. You want to make sure you've got enough. And if it's always hard to get enough, if it's there, you take it. So all the systems are designed to make sure you've got enough. And no systems are designed to say, wait, that's too much and stop. And that's essentially, I think, how the body works. And so we're fighting that battle now. We have gone from the land of want to the land of plenty. And so it's hard. You have to live in that when the natural systems don't go. In the zoos where we do look at the animals, one of the real problems with zookeepers is keep their animals healthy and not get overweight. They do tend to get overweight.